Good afternoon, everybody out there in the world. Good afternoon. If you're,
Good afternoon.
yes, my name is Henry Lucas,
And I'm Sharita Walden.
and this is By Any Means. And we are happy that you are joining us today. We are glad to be here. You'll have to excuse me. I'm a little bit under the weather here, so my voice might sound a little crackly. And I'm definitely staying hydrated today. If you're sick, please stay hydrated. Make sure that you get all those vitamins and minerals that your body needs so that you can heal. Today, we are going to talk about empathy.
Mm, mm.
Yeah. What
Empathy.
you got on that? Yeah.
I mean, I feel like, first of all, I'm going to say this. Let's back up. Henry, some people might like your voice like that. So be careful. They'll be like, that sounds nice.
What kind of people though?
I don't know. But for real talk. Anytime I hear empathy, well, of course, and not to brag on us and what we do in this work, but I think about what we do, um, how we meet people where they're at, how we care for people, how we, navigate this world with each other in community. So it really sits close to my heart.
Well, it's not close to my heart today.
Uh,
Yeah, I know that's right. Don't forget to like and to share and to subscribe. Please get this out to all of your people. Help spread the word. We having unapologetically real and authentic conversations. That's what we're doing here. So, and I don't know, Shrita, if it's because I've been under the weather, but I don't really have much empathy in my tank these last few days.
mhm.
I think that's something that a lot of us we don't really talk about. That it's really expected that if we work in healthcare,
Mm.
that if we work in a helping field, if we're in an industry where we have to be on and be available and be present, we go through stuff too. We
Yeah.
have financial difficulties too. Like when there's social injustices going on, like we struggle with things too, just like the people that we serve out in the communities. So you feeling real, you feeling yourself today. I don't have no empathy right now, like I don't, and I think it's important. It's okay for one, but I think it's also important that we have some level of awareness,
Hmm.
because even though I may not have much empathy in my tank, that's real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's real. And I think the people deserve for us to show up real no matter where we're at, even if I'm not feeling the best and I don't have much empathy in my tank today, right?
I love that. You are absolutely right. And I like that people get to hear it out loud, that they are able to hear that it's okay. My level of empathy has been going through many transitions. So on Thursday, when this actually airs in post, I am supposed to share at the Capitol a spoken word piece around empathy. Now, I wasn't asked last week to do it. I was asked for some time to do this. And it took up until a week ago to get to a point where I can put into words how I truly feel deep inside. So what you're feeling, I want to sit with that because that is exactly where I was since January 1. That's exactly where I was. Like, oh my gosh, I can't actually see it and feel it. And it took me really unpacking, where is my empathy? Where does it lie? Because yes, I see the world around us and it's lacking empathy. Like, I think maybe we should unpack the definition of empathy. Like,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
is the definition of empathy when as we're talking about it?
Well, I think that empathy is really about being relatable to another person or a group of people. Empathy may not necessarily be that I've been through the same thing you've been through. It may not be empathy, but what empathy might be too, though, is I've been through my own stuff in my own way.
Right, right. And that to me, when we actually define what empathy is, I think that opens the conversation for people outside of you and I to show up authentically and be able to say, you know what, right now in this moment, I'm not feeling it. Or yes, in this moment, I can't actually see it. Um, what I found to be difficult is the definition of empathy. The definition of empathy and what we're seeing happen today in our structures and our systems is damn near the opposite of it. And it feels scary at times. Like I was trying to think of a really cool, strong word to use. I was like, what word can I use? Because Henry talks about how I use a lot of words to describe. I could describe one word with two paragraphs. Okay, but I can't. It makes me feel scary because I'm like, we're not even seeing it happen in front of us in our world that we live in and how we exist.
You know why? Empathy is about connection,
Mm,
right? And it's like empathy is about me. It's me connecting with you through something that you're going through that I can relate to because it's something that I went through. But if I'm not connecting with myself and my story and the pain and suffering that I've been through, if I'm not acknowledging that on some level, it's going to feel real uncomfortable to sit with a friend or to sit with the client or to
mm,
sit with the colleague or to sit with the leader because I haven't done my own work. I'm not aware of my own tragedies.
mm.
And so if I'm not empathic with myself, then I'm gonna miss the mark completely with other people. And I think that's the real problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Is like if it's a white person or if it's someone in a political position, if
Hmm.
it's a leader of some organization, they're disconnected from their own pain, their own struggle. So until that can happen, and not just like on an individual level, right? We're talking about like people. We're talking about communities. We're talking about neighborhoods.
Mm,
We're talking about even on. Let's look at the United States as a whole.
mm.
All of us that are living here, we're not connected to that. So if I'm not connected to that for whatever reason, maybe I'm afraid, maybe I'm ashamed, maybe I'm avoidant, maybe it's uncomfortable. I don't know. But if I'm not connecting with those parts of myself, then I'm going to be resistant and I am not going to feel welcome to connecting to things that you're going through.
Wow. And you, as you were describing that and I was listening, you started to remind me of a relationship I built with one of my friends who um, it actually strengthened our relationship. Him and his husband moved out of the country. Um, but my friend, I went to their house and I was really frustrated about how a system was responding to our houseless community. Now, this friend of mine is white, although they are gay and married to a man, is very privileged, live in a beautiful, amazing house, architect. I mean, everything you want and need, he has. And he said, can I share something with you? And I said, yes, of course. And he said, I want you to hear what happened to me. And he said, now I want to say this because he said, I guess people think I have money, I have means, that I don't hurt, or that things don't impact me. But he said there was a fire that destroyed one of his properties. And he said, I was very angry, very angry. And he said, people, in so many words, did not understand and actually criticized him for being angry about the loss of his property. You have money to get more. You can get whatever you want. And he said, what hurt was that people assumed that it's like he didn't have feelings. And he said what happened was there was a houseless person that was staying there that he knew had started staying while the building was being renovated, and actually just decided to not bother them because they weren't messing up anything. But you know what happened? I think there was a really, really cold night and a fire was made, and the fire destroyed the building. And he said it hurt. It hurt, and he became so enraged. Like, I allowed this people to stay here, but now I have a property that I invested my time, my talent, and my money and my effort into, and now it's washed. I have to start over. And as I listened to that, for the first time, I have to admit, Henry, and it's only been a few years, for the first time, it was as if my eyes were able to see the human and not the privilege. Now, everyone that knows me and follows me knows that I can break down privilege and I can dissect it and we can have,
Yeah. You can
but
do
that,
that.
I can't, but that moment, Henry, it was like, I felt that. I felt that. No, first of all, I don't have no properties. I'm still a renter, right? I don't have that experience. But when he described the pain, the loss, things that we can relate to, and I felt just as bad. And it was funny and shocking to me when I left and I was talking to my friend that was there with me. I was like, I felt bad too. Like, damn. And I said, now I know how to connect with someone who I have considered privileged is by connecting to that human part of us, which is what you just talked about. Empathy. I don't have that same scenario, but do I have experience of extreme loss to me that impacted my world? That something I felt I've spent a lot of time. Have I experienced those same emotions and the intensity of it? Absolutely. Henry, how do we get people to sit with the uncomfortable? Because that was not comfortable. It was uncomfortable trying to listen from the beginning and the end because I'm looking at someone that I'm sitting on their couch that costs about as much as a car. Like I'm like, I had to sit with my biases. How do we get people outside of us to finally see that human part, loss, the pain, disappointment? How do we get that?
I think a beautiful story.
Mm,
I think we have to build up a tolerance first.
mm. Oh, that's real. Like, I ain't gonna
I
give you
mean,
the easy way out.
no, I mean, but think about it though, right? Because if I struggle with empathy for whatever reason, I can't go to my enemy first
Mm,
because it'll be too intolerable.
mm,
So start close to home. Start at your church, start at your work,
mm.
start in your house, start with your family, start at a get together.
So
You know,
Henry, I want to throw something at you. I'm sorry. You know I'm getting pumped now because I think what I've noticed on these podcasts, Henry, and the last one, you guys, Henry didn't say it, but one of his little beautiful babies was out ill, and Papa Henry was at home, taking care of the baby. So he missed a lovely conversation before. But what I noticed is that maybe we might be at the tipping point of people who look like me learning to understand my side. Henry, how can you share a time, and you may have to reflect for a second, where that baby step you're talking about, starting with how can you get people who look like you to sit with that discomfort? Because a lot of people expect us, people that look like me, to just be able to sit with it because we have uncomfortable conversations all the time in our homes. But Henry, for our viewers, for our listeners, for our followers, remember, like, share, and comment, you guys. Subscribe to this because these are going to be nuggets that are valuable. Henry, if you could think of a time where you took that baby step to empathize with someone from the other side of the track, someone who you, to give that example to folks, how did you do it as a appearing to be a white cisgender male with I call it birth privilege, because Henry got a story for you. He ain't come from a whole bunch of money. That birth privilege. So how do you share that with the community that looks like you?
That's a good question. It's a tough question. Um, we're not all that different, right? And like I imagine, like, growing up, like our families having similar conversations but in their own ways behind closed doors, right? So, part of this idea with empathy and around connecting is to get to know someone and to listen to their story. And I think if we can begin to listen to understand one another instead of listening to respond or listening to react, I think we'll see that we're all much more alike in the most simplest, fundamental, foundational ways than we are different. And I'm not saying that through the lens of, like, all lives matter, because right, it's important that we because part of this whole thing about empathy isn't my pain is your pain and your pain is my pain.
Right.
There's also an opportunity to celebrate our differences in that. I don't know what it's like to be you. I don't know what it's like and some of the things that you've had to endure in your life. But I know from my experience of growing up in a biracial household, of being an observer, I experienced a little bit of some of that in my own way. And I'm grateful that, like, even in that small percentage, we are not the same person. We are not from the same area. And there's a real beauty in that, right? That we have this sort of relatable life experience, whatever percentage that it is, and it doesn't have to be the same. Let's welcome diversity and differences, right? Because that's really where I think the beauty is. Because it's like, oh, well, you experienced that? Yeah, well, listen to something that I went through. And it's like, oh, well, yeah, that didn't sound like it was no fun. No, but I can relate though.
Right.
Right. So I think that's important. Now, to answer your question, going back, I think about, growing up the way that I did, and, growing up in a really predominantly white schools. And one of the things that I realized was how important it is to even just to get to know somebody's name.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, we are so judgmental and so critical of other people, and we don't even know their name. Oh. So starting there to get to know their name, and then starting there to get to know their interests, starting there to get to know where they live and what they're about.
Mm-hmm.
And then as we can do that, right, we start to develop this trust. And as we start to develop trust, then we can start to practice empathy. Because the thing about empathy is it is incredibly vulnerable. It is incredibly vulnerable for me to say, you know what? I struggle too. I suffer too.
Mm-hmm.
Here's how. I can totally relate to what you're going through right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's vulnerable. And I think people at the end of the day avoid empathy because it's incredibly vulnerable and it can feel really unsafe.
It can.
So we have to take those small steps into one another so that we can have that trust established so we can start to really have some empathy. But it starts with listening.
Oh, yeah.
You know, when we have conversations with people, maybe not us because we know each other well, but you're getting to know somebody, we should probably ask about 75% of the dialogue. 75% of the dialogue should be questions.
Mm-hmm.
But most people want to talk about themselves. That's the thing about empathy. It's so hard to grow empathy in such a self-absorbed environment.
Oh, yeah. It is. You know, as you were talking, and thank you for sharing that really basic. I always tell people, let's go back to childhood. Remember we were in kindergarten and your parents said, go make friends. See, in our childhood, we didn't have a tablet to go make friends. We had to learn how to, hi, I'm Sharita. Hi, I'm Henry. Oh, okay. Like it's so basic how we started it off, you know? And so you reminded me of that. But as you talked, it brought me to, I guess, people sitting, well, we're not seeing it today, right? And I said, well, empathy has been used and misused in ways that have been weaponized to create policy and create change. What me and Henry and I are talking about is what we can do. Now, some people may be sitting here like, well, how can empathy be used to help? So I want you to think about it. We actually use empathy right now for a big platform. And I don't know if you all can guess it, but I'm going to throw it out there. Reproductive rights. And the reason why I throw out reproductive rights is because, as you can see, marching in the street, it's not just one race, ethnicity, and even at times one gender marching for the rights for women to have self-determination, autonomy over their body. It's not just white women marching by themselves. It's not just Black women or Latino women or any communities of color or any immigrants. You see this large group of people, beautiful rainbow, including men, including so many different layers of our society come together about reproductive rights. Where do you think it comes from? Henry, the first thing I think about is like, well, it has to be empathy. It starts with the very basic. And what would be the empathy? What are some things that come up when you think about reproductive rights? Why are all these people coming together, Henry? Men, women, trans, I mean, just everyone comes together for reproductive rights, even though it's not impacting everyone in the same way.
Let's see. It has to do with babies and children.
And all of us have some type of story or connection. Think about the babies you had. You could march with your wife and your children and support the same cause, because if your wife did not get the care, and how I love and adore your wife, tell her I shouted her out, Mrs. Lucas. If she did not get the care, and I don't know how her pregnancy and her birth went, but you got to experience it. Just imagine you're connected to that. You don't have to know it because you haven't been able to give birth yourself physically, but you were there. You were a part of seeing what happens in this. It's just as basic as babies and children, and all of us have some type of connection to that.
Honey, you would have thought I was pregnant right along with her. And I know somebody judging me right now for saying that. I might have gained more weight than she did.
And a lot of partners do. Because even that, what do they call it? They call it sympathy pregnancy or whatever, that the partners with them. So I think about this. How do we revolutionize? How do we say by any means we're going to resurrect empathy in our community? What I think about is the education, hear me? You know, when we talk about, I'm gonna say a word and it's gonna frighten people: decriminalization of drugs. Oh my God. People are like, the first thing people say is, so you just want heroin to be free and everybody gonna start shooting up. And I'm like, whoa, if it becomes free, I'm not shooting up, you guys. It's not my space. It's not the thing that I want. But decriminalization of drugs, and we get people that walk away and we got 5 people standing. How do we educate to show empathy around these tough concepts? Because reproductive health, you started with babies. Somebody else will come in and say, in the Black community, Black women die at a higher rate during child. So people come for that reason. White women have dealt with different issues in their life. I don't know all of them, but I march alongside them as well. So we all can come together, because reproductive rights is easy because it's children and babies. But what if we're talking about decriminalization of drugs? A lot of people are going to abandon. Where do we start? It's so heavy to me.
Yeah, I just noticed as you said that, just the energetic shift from thinking about babies, you know what I mean, to thinking about, people who use drugs. And just even energetically, it's like, and this is what we do. It's like, well, I don't necessarily know, I think it starts with, looking at the facts. When we had our podcast a couple of weeks ago, we talked about judgments and we talked about, projections and, these little like sub populations of the greater community, like, they all have a different impact on us. I have a friend who's a mentor of mine. He's in his late 60s, and he said, if COVID was like polio, we would have handled it differently. And I think it shows during COVID the lack of empathy that we have for our elders in our community.
Wow.
Because if it would have been children that were affected, remember, children couldn't get sick, and if children were dying at the rates that our elderly were, it would have been completely different.
Wow. Woo, you hit another one.
So we all have these target groups that are very near and dear to our heart, right? And it's like, but those are addicts, or those are homeless, or those are uneducated, or those are they live in Eastern Kentucky, or they live in the West End, whatever the thing is. And those are easy ways to stay disconnected from being able to like demonstrate what this means to have empathy. I think we have to find something to get behind. We have to have people that we would be willing to stand for. And I think if we can start there, and if I can start there and say, well, I'll stand for the babies, then what else would I be willing to stand for? What other groups would I be willing to march for? What other people would I go to the Capitol for?
Right.
who else would I endorse?
Mm,
I think we start at home
mm.
first, and we make it okay to start from the place that where there's least resistance. And it's like let's ease into it. And as we build our tolerance for what we can stand for, we often find that we're standing for decriminalization
Wow.
or any number of issues that we see out in our community. We have to stand for something. We have to back something or somebody. And I think that's the best place to start.
I love that. And I actually love when you said starting close. So we keep coming back to you guys, the starting right in your, some of you guys have heard me say your circle of love, right? Your primary. We're not asking people to run out into the streets and say, listen, it is right. And as Henry talked about that, I'm such a visionary. I was thinking of times where it was hard for me to make the switch. And when I say make the switch, I've been a drug and alcohol counselor for years. And I started just like Henry off in abstinence-based treatment. Complete abstinence-based treatment. Mujahid, God rest his soul, I swear all the time. I said I would be having all kind of conversations to try to help him get through his ambivalence because he's probably rolling over in his grave on me like he can't believe what we're doing. Right, Henry? I'm serious.
Well, I honestly think that he's super proud.
Oh,
You
I
know,
said
you
I'm
know
not
that. You know that he's super. It might go against his principles, but
yeah.
it's undeniable that he and so many other people that aren't with us are really proud of the work that you've been doing.
Well, thank you for that. But I
Yeah,
say that to say it took a minute for me to switch. And Henry's absolutely right, you guys. I grew up, with parents that are law enforcement and, Black Panther veteran from the Vietnam War, all these part of some of the systems that we are dealing with today. And then family members who suffer from the disease of addiction. I use that because that is what my family would call it and what those individuals in my family would call it at the time. I know moved to substance use disorder. But the transition that I'm talking about is how I got to a point for decrim. It was thinking about my uncles who didn't have access to treatment services that centered them and were
yeah,
able to support them.
yeah.
It was starting in that moment because people wonder, how can I go to Eastern Kentucky to talk about things that I talk about in Jefferson County? Well, it started years ago. The work started years ago. What you see today, Henry and I doing, is not something we would have done without the experiences of the past.
Yeah.
It's Go ahead, Henry, as you know.
Yeah, I'm also just aware that we're running out of time.
Time. Yeah.
We've we've got just a few minutes left, and I want to say something that you said, Shrita, when you said switch. And I think of this isn't really a switch as it is an evolution. And if they say the mind is like a parachute, it works best when it's open. And so if we're open and if we're curious, then we will continue to evolve
Mm-hmm.
into not just the higher versions of ourselves, but we'll continue to evolve into the higher good, the greatest good for our communities and all the places that we live. And it really starts with getting to know ourselves, getting to know our neighbors, and then we just translate that into the broader community.
Mm-hmm.
So start close to home. If you have folks that don't look like you, they don't walk like you, they don't talk like you, get to know them. If you have people in your life that choose to use drugs, get to know them. If you have folks in your life that don't have the same orientation, the same gender, same race, sit down and listen to their story, and you'll be amazed. And I firmly believe, and I could be wrong, that if more of us sat down like this and had these conversations, Sharita, we would see more change, and we would see more love, and we would see more evolution in the world that we live in. So I want to keep doing this. I want to keep doing this. This is important for me.
And I think as we get close to the end, Henry, you threw out some very tangible. You threw out a tangible list. For those of you that are following this and you're listening, I want to be able to commit. Our administrator who's helping us with this podcast, Ryan, I'm going to send to him some questions that can motivate you to start that dialogue. Because I've been with people and sat with people in conversation. There are some questions that can shut down the conversation. But what I can share with you are some of the things Henry and I talk about because of our field of study, what we do. We do have a privilege of our own on how to navigate uncomfortable and difficult conversations. That's our world. There are questions that we can share, and it won't be a long list. It'll be like a little card. And those of you that are interested, I want you to send an inbox after watching this podcast and ask, could you receive these free questions? This is not something you have to pay for because this podcast it's intentional. We want to encourage these conversations. And what I mean by examples of questions, my daughter, who's 23, I wanted to know why she drinks. But I didn't want to go to her and say, hey, tell me why you keep drinking, right? Because I knew that would shut it down. An example was, has anyone ever talked to you about your relationship to alcohol? And at first it was kind of funny. She was like, relationship? It ain't like it's a boyfriend. And we joked. It broke the barrier, y'all, because I knew she didn't know. But what happened was I was able to have a dialogue from there. That was just my example with her. And ask, well, what happens when you drink? Is it that's the conversation that happened, right? I wanted to have a conversation. I want to get to know her in that way. That's how I started. So when I say that, that's the kind of examples I'm talking about. We can share those with you because this podcast, I told you, is not like any other.
Yeah.
We're revolutionizing our communities. We're moving into health and healing. Yes, health and healing. Henry Lucas, go look him up. Louisville Health and Healing, go look him up. But we want you all to understand that health and wellness starts here with the conversation. So take it away, Henry. We're going to close out. You want to close us out?
We're going to close out. I don't have no special way to close this out, but all I will say is be kind to yourself, love yourself, and please give a hug to yourself. Thanks for joining us today. We will see you next time on the podcast.
Like, share, ask questions. Look, after we've been doing this for 30 days, we're going to have a flow. So don't judge us. No judgment zone. Like, share, join. We will be posting in the coming month the days that we're going to be live and the days that we'll be recorded. And also, if you feel so inclined, go to our website or click on the link. Save a Life for $40 is up there, you guys. $40. I'm not going to tell y'all what $40 go to as well. But that $40, save a life. You can do it.
See y'all. Take care.
See ya.